Welcome to the fifth session of the Bitesize QI Essentials series. This focuses on plan, do, study, act or PDSA cycles, which are used to test change and form the last part of the model for improvement. If you haven't already, please watch the previous videos of the series which explain how to improve, how to set a smart aim, the family of measures and selecting changes. This session focuses on testing changes through PDSA. And so I'd like to introduce you to PDSA cycles, which, as I said, are the method to test change. And what I'd like for you to take away from this are to know the individual steps of a plan, do, study, act cycle and the key tasks within that, and to know the key principles behind PDSA as well. So, as a recap, this is the model for improvement on the left-hand side. It asks 3 key questions, which should be addressed before you then embark on testing changes through PDSA. PDSA is a cyclical process, and so it's a repeated process of testing change incrementally and on a small scale. It has 4 different steps, as shown in the diagram. The first is to plan the test. And so in this stage, what we ask you to do is to think about all of the logistics, the things that need to be set up and put in place before you can then actually get on with testing the change ideas that you have. It's important to acknowledge here that we test one idea at a time in PDSA. We don't test more than one idea, because if we do, we won't know which of those ideas work and which don't. So as it's a small scale test of change, we're able to test these rapidly and individually. So plan and think about things like who's doing what are they going to be doing, how long are we going to do it for, where is the trial going to be, and what sort of data do we need to collect during the PDSA cycle, as well as before and after. Make a prediction at the start around what you think might happen. So if you're introducing a care bundle, do you think that it will be easy to use? Do you think that it will be quick to use and has a particularly logical order or not? Just simple predictions are good for PDSA. The next step, once you've made a plan, is to do the test and to test it on a small scale and make sure that it's reversible. So that if things don't go as planned, then we can stop the trial immediately, stop that test immediately and revert back to the status quo before we then plan another PDSA cycle. At this stage, document anything and everything, so any problems that you experience, any unexpected outcomes, any good things as well, so that we can share learning and discuss that as a team. Once you've done the test, ideally you're piloting it, testing it on a very small scale, so on maybe one patient at first, one clinic at first, one ward round at first, before then seeing whether it works and then scaling up if it does. You study the results when you do after you do the test, and you compare the results to your predictions. Did it match? Did it not match? Why? What was the difference? Ideally, you're plotting your data on a continuous chart of some sort. So here we're saying to use a statistical process control chart where possible. You can see videos about that if you'd like to learn more. Collect feedback as well. Feedback is a really useful tool and should be collected throughout every PDSA cycle, and collect that from the wider team, anyone that's involved, including patients, and then reflect. Once you've completed these first 3 stages, then the next step is to make a decision and to act on your results. So there are 3 different options that you can take. You can either adopt the change, so that trial went well, you're going to scale up from 1 patient to 3 patients, to 5 patients, to 10 patients, and so on. You can adapt the change, so some things worked, but it just needs a bit of a tweak, so we'll try it on another patient in a bit of a different way, and then scale that up if that works. Or we abandon the change. So that one patient that we tested on, it just did not work, and we don't think it's a viable thing to take forward, but we try something else using another PDSA cycle. The end result really is to prepare for the next one. So it's a iterative process, and by that I mean that we repeat these PDSA cycles over many times to see whether we've had the desired result, but also to see whether things work or not. Here are some key principles of PDSA that I'd like you to take home with you. It's really important to test on a small scale because that means that we're able to test rapidly. We can do things in perhaps a few minutes instead of a few weeks by testing on one patient or one member of staff. We're also minimizing risk, because if we only do it on a small scale, we're not then looking at spreading it across the population in one fell swoop. We're doing it incrementally and making sure that we're doing the right thing before we ramp up and scale up. As I've said a few times, it's iterative, so it's repeated cycles of improvement, one after the other, based on learning from the previous cycles. As part of that plan stage of PDSA, we should make predictions and then see whether our outcomes actually match those or not, and if not, why not, and what did we learn about that. As part of the study aspect of PDSA, it's important to use data over time so that we can plot trends and understand trends as well. So that if we're trialing on one patient and then 3 and then 5 and then 10, we can perhaps see if there's any changes over time. Crucial to this is to document at every stage so that we can learn from every stage and reflect on what's happened in that cycle, in that PDSA cycle, but also in previous PDSA cycles as well. And as I've said this word a few times now, but the focus of PDSA is not improvement, it's learning. And so we're testing things on a very small scale to learn what works and what doesn't. And then we can ramp up the good things, the things that we know will work or we believe will work, on a larger scale. And that's then about improvement, because we've learned from what works and then we're testing it on a much larger scale. That's PDSA in a nutshell. The next step for you is to watch videos now on taking your project forward through driver diagrams and plotting them on, or documenting them on, the live QI system.